Hey guys, welcome into Something Like Therapy. Today, me and Jess are going to get a little personal. Well, a little bit more personal than usual. We're going to be sharing our experience of being special needs parents. So, we're going to discuss the roller coaster journey that we've been on since both or two of our sons were diagnosed with autism at an early age. It's something that's near and dear to our hearts, a topic that we definitely want to have multiple episodes on. So I hope that you stick around, and I hope that it will help those parents, maybe new parents that are out there, or maybe parents that have been raising their special needs kiddos, kind of help you with us shedding some light and talking about how we've done it and what we've experienced. And again, hopefully it helps you guys on your guys' journey. So without further ado, let's get to the show.
Are you gonna start?
Hey guys. When I said, hey, do you want to run it today? And you're like, yeah.
Oh,
That's why I was like, oh, okay.
I thought you
Usually
meant like
say
we were
hi.
running, like what we were gonna be like talking about. I didn't know.
So I'll be always the captain of hello. Welcome in.
Okay,
Hello, friends. I'll be the Jim Nance.
I'm good with that.
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Something Like Therapy.
Hi guys, welcome back. I think I'm just a little nervous, I guess, because this is going to be probably one of the most personal episodes that we've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, everything we talk, we're talking everything about like our lives and stuff, so it is very personal, but today will be a little bit more, obviously, because we're going to be talking about the one thing that is more important than every other thing that we talked about and everything in our lives when you're talking about our boys. So, it probably will be a little nerve-wracking a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think it's one of the things that since we've had our two youngest boys, everything we do is based around this topic, and it was something that changed our lives forever. So it is a very sensitive topic, but also something that I think it's become one of our biggest like strengths, as a family. It's brought us together. It's changed not just us as as a couple, but I think as a family overall. And I mean like our not just immediate family, but a family around us as well. So
I think and if obviously if you just go off of the title of today's episode, we are talking about being parents of special needs children. Both of our boys, or two of our sons, were diagnosed with autism at a very early age. I think 2, 3, or 3. They had to wait until 3 to be officially diagnosed. But yeah, just really quick, like you said, I mean, it's like something that forever changed our lives. I think when you talk to any parent, as soon as you have a child, it forever changes your life. Your life is never the same. But of course, having a child with special needs, any special need, physical, mental, neurological, obviously adds a little bit more challenge to that parenting task. So yeah, it definitely has changed us. And I know we have in the past talked about, I think it was just maybe even our last episode where we're like, don't let things define who you are. Like, don't let, something like the title, like, oh, this is who I am. But honestly, I think this is one thing that I have, maybe not at first, but have kind of grown into, where I'm like very proud that it defines me. Like, I am the parent of a special need child. Like, my sons have autism and I'm their dad. Like, I will die behind that, that identifier. So it's one thing that, I think has obviously, when we'll go into it, like changed us over the years. And that roller coaster which it is. It has been a roller coaster. It has taken us how many ups and downs, but it's one thing that, like, I know will be that we will identify as for the rest of our lives. And like I said, I've come to really take pride, or actually not, I don't know if it's pride, but just like it
well,
means
it's definitely
something to me,
not to be ashamed of, and also it's something that I think has helped us just evolve as, as people, as parents, as a couple. Like, I think before the boys were diagnosed, we were just very much set in, a certain way of thinking. And
like every parent.
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, just being a parent in general, it makes you think differently. It makes you see the world differently. Like when, before becoming a parent, like you didn't see danger everywhere. Once you have a kid, it's like there's danger all over you, and you're just like, all of a sudden that, corner of the table, it can become deadly, right? Like it's just, it really does shape you and cause you to think so differently. But becoming a special needs parent, it does, I mean, I don't know, I think it does alter your brain in a way that is very different from just becoming a parent, and I think, it is, it sounds almost kind of like, I don't know, fake in a way when you say, like, it's become like a strength, but it really does, because you just become a different type of human being. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to figure out a way to say what doesn't sound like we're trying to boast about being a special needs parent.
Yeah.
But
one of the best words I've always, seen when it comes to like families and parents and marriages of that, with children with special needs, is that you become very resilient.
Yeah.
The resilience that you build, because like we said, there's challenges to being a parent, but obviously there's a little bit more challenges and different challenges when you have special needs, or you're a parent of a special needs kid, because it's not like your typical day. There's a lot more things added onto it, and it just kind of feels like, I mean, just, and it's on the top of my head because we just saw it, one battle after another, where it's one thing after another, where it's like, okay, we figured out this, now there's this, and then we figured out that, now we have to think about that. And it's like, it's micro in the sense of just the day-to-day, like getting them to figure out, what do they like to eat? How do I get them to eat more of this? Or how do I get them to not want this stuff? And so it's like little micro battles that you win, but then it's the macro battles of toddler to child to teen to teen to adult, and we'll go through more on that. But it's just like little battles and big battles, but you're constantly moving on to the next thing. So that, like I said, that builds such a resilience with parents. And this is something that, like, we've obviously have seen in ourselves, or we've experienced through ourselves, but just with talking with other parents of special needs kids, and this is obviously something that's very near and dear to our hearts, and something that will forever be close to us, that we even, remembering back to like our church days, when we were apart, we tried to get that going, and we started that, special needs night with families, but getting the chance to just talk to different families, and there was a full spectrum of, from autism to other different neurological things, to physical handicaps, but anything that requires special need was welcomed. And to just talk to families, it humbles you, and it also reminds you that you're not alone, because a lot of the times something like this, and we'll kind of go into, how we were when our middle son was first diagnosed, and that was our first experience with it. But it's an immediate, like, end of the world depression, dread, thinking like, what are we going to do? What's his life going to look like? And you kind of, if you're not like keen to just understanding, like, to not allow yourself to sink into that, you can just stay there, and you're not benefiting yourself, you're not benefiting your child. So yeah, but I think, like, being able to talk with other families, and especially those that are more experienced with it, which we were able to, allowed us to kind of change our perspective over the years, pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with just, kind of sharing our first experience with autism, which was with our son Jude. He was, everything was normal when he was born. Everything seemed fine, started to develop normally as, we thought. And it was probably around when he was about 1.5 years when we started to notice, like, wait a minute, he should be doing a little bit more, maybe talking. He did start to talk, but we noticed a little bit of regression starting to happen. So we knew that there was something, something was off. Like, I didn't even think about autism because we've never had anyone like talk about autism or mention autism. Maybe we've heard of it but didn't really pay much attention to it because it was just not something that we'd ever seen. Now it's funny because now that we know what autism is, I'm like, oh shoot, there is actually a lot of people that have autism around us and we just didn't.
And for those, thinking that, like, because nowadays autism is very more prevalent, like this, our son's now 15, so this was 14 years ago where it wasn't as much. I mean, I know autism has been more and more over the last, like, 2-3 decades, but, like, in our world, 14 years ago, it wasn't as, like,
it
wasn't. Of course, that's autism. Everyone has autism now. Like,
the awareness of it wasn't the way that it is now, and then also there was like the way that the spectrum is now where it's just so wide and there's just so many, there used to be like Asperger's and autism. Like it was like two different things. Now it's just one huge spectrum. Yeah. And I think when our boys were diagnosed is when like they started to be, talk more about the spectrum of like differences in autism, and so that's still something that we are very much still learning on. But like we were talking about the other day where you talked about Asperger's, I'm like, well, that's not even a thing anymore. It's not a diagnosis anymore. Now it's just autism.
And when they were diagnosed, I think that is the reason why, because they still have the diagnosis of severe autism, which I think if they were to be re-evaluated and diagnosed, that might be different, just in the sense that over the years we have seen children and people with severe, and our kids just don't seem at that level. I mean, there's times, of course, with our, especially with Jude, like with stemming and sensory issues. However, I mean, I've just seen to be given the diagnosis of severe was just like, but again, I think it goes back to like before the spectrum was like, well, either you have Asperger's or you have severe autism. Yeah. So they didn't have Asperger's.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's just, again, it was something that we just weren't familiar with. We didn't understand. So we began to notice some things, and I think it was, some of our family members had expressed a little bit of concern, like, why isn't he doing certain things? And I think part of us, we were in a little bit of a denial because it was just like, well, he's just a late talker. Or he's just, I mean, my son, our oldest son, was, at this point, he was about 7, 8 years old. And 8 or 9. Then. And for the most part, I couldn't really remember, it had been such a long time since we had a baby. So I couldn't really remember, like, okay, well, yes, I know our oldest, he talked, quick, like he was a fast, early talker, so that I was trying to compare him to, our oldest, Isaiah's development. And it just, of course, there were some differences, but I think there was a little bit of denial. And so when we finally were able to get an appointment and we, he was evaluated and we got the diagnosis, which we got it very, very early on. I think before he was 2, they couldn't give him the official diagnosis of autism yet, but they were starting the early intervention and they were like, okay, let's get all this started so he can, be pretty much in the system before he even goes into like his preschool age, so we can get him into early intervention, you know.
And I remember the reason that we had him evaluated was because, again, like you mentioned, the speech, he wasn't talking, so we took him to that speech therapist, and she was the one that was like, you should take him to regional to get him diagnosed for autism. And that's when we were just like, autism, like, okay, I guess we can try.
And I think even then it just didn't really click.
Yeah, we were just like, I think we left there and we were just like, oh my god, we need to find another speech therapist. She didn't know how to work with him, so
it was just like, you know, there was a lot of, it was denial. It was denial, and also it was a little bit of ignorance. We didn't know much. So fast forward to, you know, finally going to regional, and, you know, them pretty much preparing us for, ultimately, this might be the diagnosis you're going to start preparing for.
Yeah.
And, you know, they said the worst thing that can happen is that we get all the services for him, and ends up being that he doesn't have autism, but he got all the intervention that he can get.
Again, with that severe diagnosis, it was, or like if it, you know, because of that diagnosis, kind of qualifies you for a lot of therapies.
But as time went on, we began to notice more and more things, obviously more stemming. You know, he did the classic spinning, the hand flapping, that, you know, there was a lot of things that were like, okay, we're starting to see autism begin to like really unfold and to show itself. So by the time he was, I think it was like a couple of months before he turned 3, was when he finally got the diagnosis. Yeah. In the meantime, we have another child very, very close together. And it was actually one of Jude's ABA therapists that was coming in to give Jude, you know, therapy, where she noticed that our youngest, Jonah, was already showing signs of autism. And it was funny because when I can't remember, we took, I think it was Jude for a follow-up, and the doctor mentioned something, I can't remember if you were there or you weren't, but she said, you know, if you have a child with autism, that the chances of their siblings having autism is 50-50. And when I heard that, I just knew, that he's going to have autism. Because this is, at this point, Jude's therapist is just like, yeah, you should really get him evaluated. And, you know, it was weird because Jonah, our youngest, was more high functioning. And, you know, he was
still is
just very, he is. But there was little similarities and little things, and I thought, well, it's just learned behavior. He watches his brother.
He thinks that's how you're supposed to act.
And I'm like, well, it's obvious, you know. So even then, there was still also a layer of denial with our, you know, with our third child. But ultimately, they both got diagnosed very close together, almost back to back. And the reason I think Jonah got the very early diagnosis was because of his brother. Mm-hmm. So Jonah got diagnosed way before he turned 3. I think he was like 2.5. Yeah. Because at this point he was already showing basically all the signs of autism that Jude had shown, you know, in the beginning. Yeah. So it was honestly like 2 back-to-back blows that I don't know. I think it took a very, very long time to sink in. I can't even tell you when that diagnosis sinked in. I think it was like when I heard Jude's diagnosis, I was in denial. When I heard Jonah's diagnosis, I think I was numb. I think I really just became like numb, and it just, I don't know, it didn't register until maybe 2-3 years later, when it finally sunk in, when, you know, we started to, you know, deal with constant IEP meetings, constant, you know, just therapists coming in and out of our home. it was just nonstop. Like you said, like one battle after another. It really was just nonstop, and just always talking to people, always talking to therapists. Need to get them into OT, speech therapy. Like it was, it was no stopping, and it was a never-ending battle of, what do we need to do, what kind of interventions do we need, what, like, how can we fix this, like, what can we do, like, are they ever going to live a normal life, like, it was challenging.
I think it's kind of weird looking back on it because, I think being a young parent, I mean, I consider ourselves young still. We're in our 20s, so we're young. That, like, it took me, at least for myself, like, it took me years to, like you said, accept the diagnosis, or not even to accept it, but to understand it, because I still, for some reason in my head, was just like, okay, so they have autism, and it's just something that, we're gonna have to work with them, or they're gonna have to work on now as a kid. But, like, they'll grow up and they'll kind of like outgrow this, and they'll start talking fine, and, it will get normal.
Well, really quick, and I want to say real quick, because to kind of like, what's the word, like, just validate what you're saying, because we had their doctors, their pediatricians tell us, oh, don't worry, like, they're just young, they're gonna outgrow like, this.
Yeah.
We had one of their pediatricians literally tell us this.
Yeah.
That, don't worry, he'll outgrow it.
And it's like, okay, like, benefit of the doubt, if you're a doctor, you probably should be a little bit more professional and a little bit more medically scientific. Shouldn't give false hope to people, because autism, and as a doctor you would know this, autism is lifelong. There is no cure for it. You don't outgrow it. You shouldn't really be telling parents that. You should be more on the sense of letting them know that people with autism still can live a full life. They learn to they obviously don't get cure of it, but they learn to live with their, for lack of a better word, symptoms, with sensitivity, sensory issues, or stemming, or, food, what do you call it? Being particular with food, whatever the case, the many different things of autism, the many different faces, that they just learn to cope with it, and they can still live a full life. That's more along the lines. But don't, tell someone that they're going to outgrow it, and that they will be, because, and that's why I said, like, normal, because it really, that is a word that I think is very damaging to a lot of parents with children with autism, because that sinks in that my child's not normal. They're never going to act normal. They're not going to do normal things. And that, honestly, I think was, I'm sure with many parents, the thing that kind of held at least me back from being able to move forward and accept it, and move forward to being more positive in, like, what we were talking about. We will find a way to have them live a full life. They will get to experience everything, as, all the joys of being a kid and a teen and growing up. It wasn't until years later, and I don't even know, I know you told me, I don't know where you heard it from, if it was from a podcast or someone told you, but it's something that stuck with me, and I hope that it does help any parents that are new to, a diagnosis with their kids. But you had said, like, you have to, when you're a parent and your child gets diagnosed, or with whatever the case may be, with whatever disorder or maybe physical handicap that they may have, is that as a parent, when your kid is born, you have all these dreams and expectations of, like, oh, what's their life going to be? And what are they going to be? Are they going to be an athlete? Are they going to be the president? Are they going to go be an astronaut? All these things, and, like, little league and sports and this and that, you have all these big dreams, and you're just waiting to go through with them, or go through, for them to happen, or for life to start with your kid, that you have to take a step back, and you have to mourn, you have to let those dreams go, and you have to mourn it because that's not going to happen. That's not in the cards for your kid. Mm-hmm. Your kid's going to live a different life. They're going to experience things in a different way. They're going to go through them in a different way. And it's going to be different for you being their parent. And that really didn't sink in until later, but it did help. I think it helped us both a lot to like, wow, that's good. That is a crazy way to look at it, because until you stop and you're just like, maybe whatever you got to do, you got to cry it out, you got to scream, you got to just release it. That's not going to be. So what do we have now? It's kind of like clear the plate and let's go. Because without doing that, you're only hurting your child's progress. You're only hurting your relationship with your kid. You're only hurting yourself to not be the parent, the strong parent that you need to be to help them to live their full life, of what their full life's going to look like.
Yeah, I think that's probably when that was a turning point for me as well, because I don't think I realized how disconnected or disassociated I was from my children, at the time, because I was just, like you said, we have dreams, aspirations for our children. We placed the things that we couldn't do on our kids, without even knowing.
That's most parents, we
vicariously live through them, right? So it was something that I think we needed to hear, and we needed to kind of hit the pause button and just let that process take place, because you do need to like mourn, and you need to grieve, and you need to let go of all those things that you thought your child was going to be. And to be fair, I think all parents kind of maybe have to, at some point, whether it's in the early years, later years, or the adult years, you kind of need to grieve, like, well, I thought my child was going to be this, or this is like the dream that I had for them, the hopes that I had for them. Like, right. Everyone kind of has to do that in a way, but I think with special needs families, it's a little different, because it's one of those things that it's you kind of have to maybe even grieve the simple things. Is our child ever going to live alone? Are they ever just going to be able to have a car, a driver's license, a job? Like, I mean, all the things that we just think like are just the givens. Like, for special needs families, it's very, very different. So yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of the things that we were kind of hanging on to during our denial, period, when that finally hit, I think it turned a whole new, our world flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And I think accepting and just learning, knowing that there was a lot of things that we didn't know, there was a lot of things that we weren't ever going to be able to fix. I think it just began to really sink in and really set in. And I think one thing that I realize, and I'm still trying to kind of accept, I guess, is that as parents of special needs, you want to know all the answers. Like, you want to know, like, why did this happen? When did it happen? Was it me? Was it my spouse? Was it the environment? Was it the vaccines? Was it, like, what was it? We want answers. We want to know why, and we want to know, like, who's at fault, you know?
As if, like, if whoever, God, the universe came down and was just like, this is the reason why your kid has autism. It's
right.
Like, oh, okay. They still have autism. It doesn't take it away. Like, exactly. Okay, now we just move forward. I don't care why they have it anymore.
You realize, I think too, like, the older your children get, that, because it's funny. I had a friend send me the whole thing they came up with, the Tylenol causing autism, and I understand, like, we want to know why, and I don't, to say that finding out why autism exists or why it happened to my kids, like, if I can get a real legitimate answer, like, to say that it doesn't mean anything to me, like, that would be a lie. Of course, I would love to know.
And it would help people for the future to, like, if something is causing it, maybe we don't do that anymore.
But like you said, is that going to change the fact that my boys have autism? No, it's not. It's not going to. So yes, maybe it'll make me feel a little better, or, I don't know. At this point, I can't even tell you what that would make me feel. But I think it would probably piss me off. Piss me off that, someone is at fault. But it doesn't make a difference. And I think the older they get, the more that you're just like, okay, even if you were to tell me why this happened, are you going to tell me what I can do to better the life of my children, better the quality of their life? Like, give me that. Give me those answers, because those are the ones that right now, the older they're getting, they're starting to really set in, and like those questions are starting to get more and more real. The more I see them get older, the new challenges that are starting to come, with being teenagers, because there's a lot of challenges that happen in the early years. The early years are stressful because it's just like you're not just dealing with the toddler, but you're dealing with the toddler with so many sensory issues, so many, just their emotional awareness and their physical awareness. It's just all over the place. And I mean, that's just toddlers in general, right? But when you lack communication, when they don't, when anything can set them off, like when food becomes a trigger, all these things, it's like you can't, it's very hard to navigate all those things when you're trying to figure out how to deal with the toddler, nevertheless with the toddler with freaking extreme sensory issues, right? Exactly. Like, so the early years are, I want to say, probably one of the most difficult. It's between the toddler and the elementary years. Like we had, and it's having two special needs kids that are on completely opposite sides of the spectrum with completely different sensory issues and, behavioral issues. I'm just like, this is when I knew, like, oh yeah, this is why there's a spectrum. Because Jude is way over there and Jonah is way over here, but somehow they both have autism, and yet you're telling me that I have to deal with it the same way? Like, no. Yeah. Absolutely not.
I think one thing too, like, like you said, when we got Jonah's diagnosis, you said you kind of felt numb. It was just because it was just like, oh my gosh, like it was just, got hit with the jab with Jude, and then here came the right hook with Jonah, like just knock us out, right?
You were already checked out.
And again, it took me a while, it took me years, but what's cool is that looking back on it now, it's almost as if, like, I don't know, I don't want to sound cliche with the whole everything happens for a reason, but I think it was just destined because, like you mentioned, Jude and Jonah are so very close in age. They literally born in the same year. They're 11 months apart. They still do. I mean, but especially when they were younger, got mistaken for twins. It was something about them just being very, very close. And even to this day, like, they share so much together. And like our youngest, even though he's the youngest for some reason, is Jude's caretaker. Like he always makes sure Jude is doing what he needs to, that Jude's safe. He helps him sometimes get like dressed or do his shoe, tie his shoe, or not tie his shoes, but they put his shoes on, brush his teeth. He'll put the toothpaste on his toothbrush for him. So he takes care of him. He's very, very close with them, and I feel that they're close. And Jude, probably feels that closeness with Jonah too. That it was almost like we should have known. Like, Jude has autism. Of course, Jonah's going to have autism. And I think, again, in the beginning years, or when it happened, it was like, oh my gosh, now it's like they're both going to suffer with this. But I think it was just like, like I said, kind of destiny, in the sense of like, that is the bond. That's the glue that they forever have. They were already going to be close. Having that diagnosis together for the rest of their lives, they're going to share that. And it kind of, let's see if I can say this without me breaking down a little bit. But we always worry about like when we're gone, who will be there. But they'll always like they'll always have each other.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's one of the little joys of getting past all the, negative about it and being able to finally see light as they get older. So it's something to look forward to, little things like that. And then the other thing too about that, a lot of parents, obviously they want to dwell on like the negatives of it, but I really think there is joy, and there is like a flip side to being a parent with a child with special needs, is that sometimes when you're a parent, and let's say you have a fully neurally functioning normal child, you can put a lot of stress, because again, those dreams and aspirations you have of them, like, okay, I want to put them into sports, and then I want them to be really smart, so I'm going to make them read every night, so they're going to be both smart and good at sports and all this stuff. You put all these expectations on them, so you're causing them maybe extra stress, and then on yourself too, to be disappointed if they're not. And you have all these things, and it's just like, you want to celebrate them, but maybe they're really not that great at sports, or maybe they're not that good at, they're not that book smart, so they don't do well in school. But then you have like the parents, the special needs parents who like, we're going out tonight, we're celebrating, like, why, what happened? Like, Jonah tried a hot dog for the first time, and he's never tried meat before, or
I remember we got so
like,
excited the first time he tried a chicken nugget.
Yeah,
because all he would eat was fries and yogurt.
It's like these little things, or like the fact, like Jude. Remember how crazy Jude would never want to get into a car that he didn't know?
Oh my God!
It literally, like your mom's car, he was just like, nope, not getting him in, and now he just gets in. I mean, hopefully, we don't get into strangers' cars, but like it was a thing. It was a sensory issue he had, and he got over that, and that was something I remember was like, oh man, it's like, this is great. So like you get to experience your kids almost in a little bit more, in a better way, because you get to celebrate them more. You get to see just the little things that make them perfect in your eyes.
There's something, and I always say this, and again, I want to say, not to say, because we have a neurotypical, son that is fully functioning, and believe me,
he has his quirks too.
Celebrate that, and I want to talk about how I feel his huge role in all of this, but
that's a whole little.
But I want to say really quick, like, the differences in raising, a neurotypical child versus a, special needs child. It's the things we celebrate are so different. And there's something like so pure about, special needs kids. Like not to say that they aren't brats and they aren't like them,
because they're still kids.
They're still kids. They're
so
still teenagers.
They try the same stuff.
We get the sass from Jude and Jonah just the same way we used to get it with our oldest Isaiah. There was the attitude, all of that. That still is a thing
for sure.
And we get some things from our youngest that I'm like, wait a minute, like, you're not supposed to be like this. Like, you're our innocent little, autistic baby boy.
Yeah, we think those like, oh, he has autism, so he's just so pure, and like he only has like pure thoughts because they're so, he's just simple.
The things that came out of that kid's mouth, it was so funny. Really quick share. We picked him up from school one day. I think he was like maybe in second grade. I can't remember. And just heads up, some bad words are going to come out, but. One of the aides, she came up to us and she was like, hey, we just want to let you know Jonah's been dropping some F-bombs, and but we did notice he was using it correctly. And I'm like, oh my, and I just like, I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, so but that again, that goes to show the things that we celebrate, the things that we, the little like milestones that we recognize that other parents wouldn't, because it's like, everything is a big deal. Everything's a celebration. I remember the first time Jude used a straw, I'm like, oh my God, he knows how to use a straw. Like, these are the things that as parents, we just overlook with our, typical developed children. And not just say like, yeah, of course we're not going to go around celebrating every little thing, but when you realize that your child fights every single day to do just the simplest thing, the basic things, like you how do you not celebrate it? And that's something that we talked about. And I tell you, like, my patience for people now is so thin, because I look at my two kids and I see how hard they fight just to show up every day.
Just to
show up every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to get in a car, just to get in a bus with loud ass kids, like
to put on a t-shirt because it feels like pricklies all over their skin.
I just, my tolerance for incompetence or excuses is just very, very low. And and I know that's probably not fair for other people, but I guess I'm saying this because I have just grown to really look at my kids, and I'm just in awe of how much they fight every day, how much, no matter how hard it is, they show up. Like, they show up every day, and I know how difficult. I mean, there's times where we go to the movies and Jonah's like, I gotta take my headphones because I can't handle the jump scares, but it doesn't stop him from going to the movies.
Exactly.
He loves the movies, right? So it's just like, again, these are the things we celebrate them for, because it's like, yes, I can't imagine what they're going through. I can't imagine, and
it's like, for parents of fully functioning children, like, it's almost like you want somehow, like, I don't want your child to be diagnosed with anything, but like somehow share with you the wisdom of what it is to, again, be able to experience your child and embrace them and celebrate them for the smallest things, so that you yourself can get to experience that.
Yes.
And again, it's almost like a little gift, a joy that we get as special needs parents that maybe, those parents don't get. And the only thing I can compare it to is like, someone who's poor and they, then they're given money. They spend their whole life poor and then they're given money. You appreciate that money and you hold on to it and you value it more, as opposed to someone who's kind of like born into just a rich family and they kind of just always have money. Like, yeah, I like the money. I know it's important and I value it, but you don't value it the same kind of way, and maybe that's not the best example, but the only thing I can think where it's just like, and I hate to, I'm not saying that every normal child's parent is just, is entitled, or like they, what do you call it? Take for granted any of these things, but it's, again, it's only something that you can really understand when you experience it as a special needs parent.
And I want to kind of jump into now how this affected us as a family, and I mean like as a whole family, how this affected our oldest son, because this diagnosis, for both of our boys came at a point where our son now is entering his teenage years, our oldest, and it was a struggle because he was starting to go into new things, new challenges, and here we have these two fresh diagnoses from our two youngest, and it was very, very difficult for him, for our oldest son.
Even just like, sorry, really quick, like even if you take away the diagnosis, like he was the only son and the only grandkid too, like in the family, or at least, with your mom, for 8 years. So, even just to get two new brothers in the same year, it's like, wait a minute, now I have two other, like, what about me? So even just that, and then to add on top of it, now they're diagnosed and they're special needs, which, just think about the title itself. There's, I mean, in his mind, they're special. I'm not. Like, it's just a lot of things that were going through his mind, or could have been going through his mind.
Until this day, now he's a father and he has, his own child and his own challenges and struggles as a parent. But even till this day, he's just like, well, I knew you guys had a lot going on. And just for him to say that.
We were blessed to have the person that we have for our older son. Like,
and I know that, we can always count on him. But that is something that that's another thing that's part of this, being a special needs family, is that we never ever want to burden him with the responsibility of raising two adults, because they're getting very close to being adults. So there's no longer kids. Now it's two, adult individuals. And I just know that that's not something that we wish to, to put on, because he has his own family. But how this affected us as a family and how it affected him as a sibling with, a neurotypical developed sibling was something that I think doesn't get talked about enough, because, even though, like you said, special needs kids have their challenges, but so do neurotypical developed individuals. And, I mean, he struggled with depression. He struggled with anxiety. There was some substance abuse. There was things that came up, and, there was challenges that he struggled with that, when I think back on it, the things that we went through with him versus the challenges that we were going through with Jude and Jonah, it was very, very difficult. Oh, and completely different. Yeah. I will say this, and nothing against my son, but I will 100 times go through what we went through with our two special needs children versus what we went through with our oldest. So, again, like, just because your kids aren't special needs, they bring their own challenges. Yeah. There's being a parent in general is very, very difficult, but navigating that, and also, I don't think we'll ever fully understand how him as an older brother, as a sibling of two special needs individuals, like how it affected him, like how it shaped his way of seeing the world, seeing, his brothers. Like, I hope one day he does share with us, because I think it's completely different for a sibling versus a parent,
I mean, and like, when we looked into it, 'cause like I said, we tried to start like a special needs, like a group for special needs families. And then kind of, I remember like looking into that, researching it, realizing that there's so many different groups, not only just for parents of special needs, but it's like siblings of special needs kids.
There, even like grandparents,
like, uncles, aunts, because the diagnosis, it's like a wave, and it ripples down, and it affects everyone's relationship with that child. And that's even something I know with like your mom and my parents, like how they, were able to interact with them, or, how they felt about it. And like I said, it's a different impact for each individual. But yeah, I mean, just with Isaiah, like, again, like I said, we were blessed because he, even at a very early age, was very understanding of like, okay, he, like I said, he could have easily took on the persona of like the victim of like, well, it's not fair, now they're here and I don't get attention or this and that. And I think he handled it like like an adult, even as a kid, even at 11, 12 years old, was just like, well, I know that, they have special needs, they have autism, so they, they're going to have more time needed for them, but I'm going to do what I need to do, sort of thing. And he's always been like that. He's always wanted to, like, I mean, at 8 years old, he already wanted to be an adult. He just wanted to do everything. So, like, he's been dying to be an adult.
He's been old since he was young.
Yeah, and I think now that he, it's like he was dying to be an adult, and now that he is adulting in the real world, he's like, damn, like, this is not fun. Let me go back to being a kid. But,
I do want to share something that I think our oldest, I feel he showed me, and I think you could agree as well. Since he was a teenager, there was something he said. I don't remember exactly when he said it, but he said something about not treating Jude and Jonah any different just because they were special needs.
Yeah.
And that really like clicked in me, because I feel like we did see Jude and Jonah under this lens of like autism and needing, all of these like special treatments and therapies. And there's something about robbing your children, even as special needs children, like of living a normal life, you know, as I mean, really what does normal really mean? But like
Exactly.
just as an organic way of life, like robbing them of that when you're just constantly seeing them under that lens of like special needs.
Like they're fragile and delicate and they have
Yeah.
to,
And when he said that to me, like, of course, at first I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know, they need this, they need that. But I looking back on it now, he was right. Like, there was something about not treating them any different, not letting them, you know, get away with certain things because they were special needs. Like, still disciplining them the way we would discipline our oldest. Obviously, you know, communicating a little different with them, but still having the same set of rules. Still, you know, setting certain expectations of them, you know, because of where they're at or meeting them where they're at, but setting expectations that you know that they can meet. You know, like things like cleaning up after themselves,
exactly.
you know, doing, and it's pretty incredible because there is certain things that I look at my boys and I'm like, dude, like they're pretty independent for the most part.
I mean, the fact that Jude, when he's done eating, will put his plate in the sink and put the water to rinse it off.
Like
there are
it's just
kids
like,
that are older than him that are neurotypical and don't do that.
There's freaking adults that don't
exactly,
do that. So. Okay, like, and the things that I mean, you know, I look at my boys' rooms and like they're always clean. They're like, you know, it's just things that I'm like, you know, we've taught them to be as independent as they can be. You know, are there certain things that I know Jude, he'll try to get away with not doing?
Oh,
definitely.
Because again, they're
he's
still
the
teens,
king,
and
the king of like, I don't want to do it because you can do it for me. Like, you
and
know?
it's like, well, from what Isaiah said too, like I don't ever treat them different because it's there in how you say it. Like if you treat someone different, then it's gonna make them. I know as a parent, we just like I want to help, I want to help, I want to help. But if you're treating them different than you would, you know, someone that's neurotypical or normal, you know, by treating someone different, you're gonna make them feel different, and they're gonna think, why am I different? So again, when you treat them like a child, you hold them up to, like you said, expectations, same expectations that we would. Hey, you got to keep your room clean. You got to get yourself dressed. Got to get yourself clean. You got to brush your own teeth. You got to clean up after yourself. That's what we would be doing with, you know, that's how we raised Isaiah too. So
yeah,
you know.
and I think again, you know, we're coming from parents that have higher functioning, even though you know they were diagnosed with severe autism. We do come from speaking from you know two kids that are or teenagers now that are a little bit on the higher functioning side of autism, but even then, you know, with Jude, he's nonverbal. You know, he does have communication, you know, issues as far as like him really being able to communicate his needs. But we have found a way for him to communicate as best as he can with us, you know, and his teachers also say that, you know, have found ways to be able to communicate with him. So having two kids on the spectrum, but on the completely opposite sides of the spectrum, I think has really helped us see autism in a whole different way, but also has, in a way, kind of like helped us navigate through autism in I don't know, like how to say it, but just like you just never know, kind of, you know, more optimistic way, because you know there's things that we don't, you know, we didn't expect you to do, but because his brother obviously is a great role model, that Jude's just like, okay, well, I'll just try that, you know. And again, like you said in the beginning, where it's just like having both of them diagnosed back to back was at the time seemed like the worst thing in the world that could happen. But looking back on it now, it's like, well, I mean, Jonah, you know, the person that he is, the type of personality he has. He's controlling, but it helps Jude a lot because it's really pushed Jude to do things, to try things. It's really helped him to come out of his shell, because Jonah's like, come on, Jude, come on, and it's like he's his cheerleader, and I love that. So having those two types of, children with, somewhat the same diagnosis, but on the completely opposite sides of the spectrum, has just opened our eyes to just like, no, these kids are so capable of capable of so much. And sometimes it's the parents' limited beliefs that is actually holding them back.
Yeah.
But we have the blessing of having, two kids that are like constantly showing us like, no, we can do more. We are capable of more. And, challenging them more, challenging them physically with like working out and doing things, that we never thought that they could do. We just recently started training them, and I'm like, oh my God, they're doing amazing. And, we could have just been like, well, they're autistic. They'll never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Like, and you'd be surprised how many parents do that because they believe the lie that, they're going to be limited for the rest of their lives. And it's not true. It's not like that,
And I think, from what we've seen, like you said, with Jonah and with Jude, just demonstrating like such independence, that it kind of makes us feel a little bit better about the future, in the sense of, like we said, will they ever be able to have a job, get a license, and hold a job, or, live on their own. And it's like, I don't know, the way like Jonah is, it's not out of the realm of possibilities to be like, maybe he could live independently somewhere, maybe still monitored or in a community of some sort, but have his own place, because he knows like he can live on his own, in the sense of like keeping his house tidy and like washing his dishes. He already washes his clothes. I mean, like, he could live, like he could, he's only 14. So like, what's the next 10 years going to bring?
I'm laughing because, what you were saying about, that he's capable of being on his own. I do, and I have hopes for that, but I have to share. We had an assessment for I think it was for like Social Security office, because they're the ones that take care of their benefits, and he the person that was interviewing him asked him, because they're basically going over like the safety, if they know what to do in an emergency, and she asked him, Jonah, what would you do if you saw smoke coming out of your neighbor's house? And Jonah was like, well, I would close the window because I wouldn't want the smoke to come in my house. And dude, I just like the interviewer, she was like she had tears in her eyes. She was crying because she was laughing. And she was trying not to laugh. She's like, that's the best answer I have ever heard. I'm like, Jonah, and we both laughed, but I'm just like, it's, again, like, the things, obviously, the logical thing, we'll call 911, the house is on fire, right? Again, but Jonah's like, no, close my windows. I don't want that smoke in my house.
You have to remind the assessor, like, he has autism, correct? When you tell someone with autism a certain thing, they're just going to give you the face value response. Like, that is the typical response. I'm like, well,
again, those are the little moments that I just like appreciate autism, because I'm just like, that was the best answer. Like, it obviously any freaking logical person is just like, well, yeah, that's not good, because like, you're literally, you gotta call 911, right? But it's like, when you're a special needs parent, and again, you find the silver lining in everything, it's like, dude, that was the most genius answer he could have given. Like, it made my day, and it made the freaking interviewer's day. But again, like, these are the, I don't know, like, again, I just call it the silver lining, because there's people, everyone that meets our boys, they're just like, your kids they're just awesome. They're funny. They're loving, they're kind, they're so caring, they're so polite, and that just really shows me that it doesn't matter just because they have autism. They are still who they are. Like their personalities still shine. Like, and I think a lot of times, and I tell this to, I've had so many people reach out to me. They're, my child might have autism, my grandchild, my nephew. And sometimes I think I come off a little insensitive, but it's not that I'm trying to be insensitive. It's just like, look, the diagnosis doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is what help, what services they're getting, what support they're getting. That's what matters. Yeah. Because even if the diagnosis they get ends up not being an accurate diagnosis, look at all the support that they got. Look at all the help that they got.
I remember being upset that they were like, he's not severe. I can't believe they gave him severe.
Yeah, just becoming autism. So offended. And it's just like, and this is not to be insensitive towards anyone's, feelings about how they feel about autism. And I get it. It's something very, very difficult. But the moment that you stop and you get past the label, and really, honestly, it really is just the label that you don't have to, like you said, like it doesn't have to base your whole child's identity or your identity as a parent. Like, all it is a diagnosis. Yeah. There's so many things, great things that can come from that. And the worst thing that can happen is the diagnosis was incorrect and they got all these services and your child's actually better prepared, for the future. Like, yeah. And that really does happen. There's people that get diagnosed and then they I think that's where it comes where like my child outgrew autism. No, they probably didn't have autism. Yeah. They probably didn't have autism. They were just a late bloomer. They were just a late bloomer, speech delay. There's other things. It's not always autism. But again, like I just encourage people, like don't get so hung up on that diagnosis. Get as much support as you can get your child everything that they can get, even if you're still on the fence about maybe getting OT or speech, whatever. If they're offering it, you just say yes.
Yeah, because I think we said it at some point too. We were like, we think every kid should maybe have speech and OT therapy through school, because OT teaches, activities of daily living, how to hold your fork and spoon, how to hold your pencil, how to do normal things, how to go to the restroom. Like, that's just called living a life.
Help your child's brain develop.
Exactly.
Like, it really does. It starts to connect those like neurons, and they start to like, oh, okay, so this is how this works, and this is how this works, and my hand does this. And we have a granddaughter now, and I'm like, that would have been awesome if she could get therapy. Even if, for the most part, it seems like she's developing pretty normal. So I have, I'm pretty sure everything's going to work out fine with her. But if she would benefit from that.
Why not?
If they were to say like, hey, she might have a little bit of take the therapy. Yeah. Who cares? Exactly. Who cares? Like, and again, it's like, I get it. No one wants that label on their children. No one wants that title.
I think more and more that's maybe hopefully going to the wayside, where people are like, the stigma behind the word therapy or that they're getting help for something. Like, I think more people, like I said, hopefully that people don't look at it as something like is wrong with your kid, or like, I don't want people to think it like, no, they're just like, dude, everyone's in therapy and it's offered and it's free. So
there was a situation with our son. He just started high school, our youngest, and there was these two kids that are in his class. He's in a much more advanced special education class, and because he is on the higher functioning side of the spectrum, anyhow, there was these two individuals that I guess were kind of picking on him, and the teacher finally had a conversation with them like, hey, he has autism, and she kind of explained his diagnoses, and the kids stopped, and as far as we know, they haven't, continued the, picking on him. It seems like they understood. And what that showed me was that people in general, but even like young kids, like they're becoming more aware and sensitive to someone with special needs. And that's amazing, because think about when we went to high school. Special needs kids were picked on all the time. And even with our oldest child, our oldest son, he was like, yeah, you don't really have to worry about that. Like, kids aren't like that anymore. Being a bully like that is actually like, you'll get your butt kicked for doing that. So it's like, there's no need to be so afraid of your child being diagnosed with something because they're going to get picked on or they're going to get bullied. I think the one thing that we probably need to be more aware of is the limitations we set on our own children. The limitations as a special needs parent that we set on our kids because of our own fears. I think those are the things that we probably should be more aware of than our kids being picked on, because there's so much more awareness, and it's talked about so much more, that it's not to say that there isn't bullying and there isn't, unfortunately, not good people out there, but I think we do more damage in the home when we fear something like autism so much. When we set our own limited beliefs, on our kids, and that, I think that's what's more damaging than anything, and that's something I think that we learned, and I feel like I'm still, trying to make sure that I don't do that with my kids, that I don't, we take them to a special needs CrossFit kind of gym, and I could tell they're kind of gentle with them, and I'm just in the back like, you guys better do that right. Like, I'm on them, because I've seen what they can do.
Yeah.
And I also see the game that they're playing where, like, well, they're not making me do that, so I'm not going to do it.
They'll milk it.
But I still, hey, you showed me that you can do that, so guess what? Now I'm going to expect you to do that. Yeah. And that's kind of how you have to be with your kids in general, but more with special needs kids as well. Yeah. We talk about the gentle parenting, but sometimes we forget that we need to also be, assertive with them. Yeah. Because that's part of their development.
And I think, with teaching your kids too about like acceptance, awareness, like you mentioned those two boys in Jonah's school. One thing too that, we've mentioned it to each other before, that like because now I look at it as a gift, like we were gifted with two special needs kids, is that it really like changed us as people in the sense of being more accepting and aware of people with disabilities, or maybe people with like sensory issues, or just across the spectrum in general, to where, because like before, at least I know for myself, I was very like no patience. Like if I was in a restaurant and there's a kid having a tantrum, like just get the kid out of here. Like I don't know, just leave. But like when you become a parent, and then especially a special needs parent, you just have a little bit more empathy and grace for those. Like, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know if that kid, what disorder he may have, or what's going on in the parent's life or the kid's life. So you just have a little bit more grace for people. So I know that's definitely taught us that, and it's kind of taught us to just be a little bit more calm as parents and as people too. So yeah, definitely like teaching that to your children, the acceptance and awareness, and it's just as important for neurotypical kids and their parents to make sure that they understand. But again, I think like you mentioned, because autism and different things like depression and anxiety, like it's a lot more out in the open, and people are more aware that a lot of people have these things. There is a lot more awareness and acceptance for everything, which is good. And then to mention, like, or to add on to what we were saying, or what we were talking about, in making sure that, like, even if you're on the fence and you don't know, to try and get all the resources and therapies that you can, as much that you are taking the time to make sure that your kids have everything that they may need to help them cope and to help them just not break down, is it just as important for yourself as well. And like we mentioned, there's therapies and groups that you can join for parents, for siblings. One of the biggest things, and that was something that we really honed in on and talked a lot about with our special needs family group that we tried to get going, was for parents and marriages, like relationships. Because I think the last time we looked it up, it was like 50%, or it was a high percentage of parents that end up in divorce when they have a special needs kid, because it takes a lot. It strains a lot on the relationship, on the marriage, because you're investing so much time and effort and energy into the kids that there's just nothing left for the relationship, for the marriage. So that's something that you definitely want to make sure doesn't happen, and definitely kind of, even if you're not seeing any issues happen now, to kind of like get in front of, so that it doesn't, so that it gives, because also too, I mean, when you go to a group, and even if you're like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable, sharing in front of people, there's just something about being in a group where all of a sudden you're just like, you know what, I do want to talk about it. Like, at least give yourself the chance to see, because there's a lot of times you may not think that there's stuff you want to talk about, or that things are affecting you, but once you get around people that are maybe like-minded and going through the same things, it kind of makes you feel like, you know what, I feel safe enough to admit this, and then it just starts coming out, and you're just like, shit, I didn't realize I was feeling that, so.
Because there is a dark side to being a special needs parent and a special needs family, because there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, and when you finally have a safe place to say all those things, it's like you realize that half of those things that you're feeling are just because you're scared.
Fear.
It's just fear. And also, it's human.
Yeah.
It's human. Like,
You think there's something wrong with you. Like, why do I resent my child for having autism? Like, I'm so horrible. But it's like, you don't resent. You don't. You're just, again, you haven't mourned that whole thing that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And I think there is something very healing about being around families, because and again, I'll say it, like, not to sound like being a special needs parent is like an exclusive club, but it's very different from, being a parent of a typical developed child. Like, the challenges are different.
Yeah.
We used to see the groups that would get together, like the parent groups of the typical developed children, and they would bring their kids with them, right? And they would just be like, everyone's together and all the kids are playing. The special needs group, it was a freaking challenge, because we needed to have childcare in order for the parents to meet. And that was a struggle, because you couldn't. I think we tried a couple of meetings where they brought the kids, and it was like, oh my god, the parents just couldn't.
Yeah, because you're constantly having to be, and that was something that I know didn't mention right now, but we had talked about before, where again, everyone's affected when there's someone with autism, but like when we had the boys, we weren't able to be around our friends and family a lot, because we couldn't take the boys to barbecues or trips to the beach or things like that, and a lot of the times it was like I kind of like shit from our friends and family, of just like, we'll just bring them, like the kids will just play and then we can hang out, and it's like, your kids can go play, you're fine with letting them go, and like, hey, stay right there, as long as I can see you. I can't say that with Jude and Jonah, like, and I say that to also say you shouldn't put yourself in a bubble to where you never want to take your children places. Again, when you treat them different, they're going to feel different. You do have a responsibility to take your kids to the beach, take them out hiking, take them out to outdoor things. But again, you're going to it's not like, again, where I can just send them to go play, or as long as I can see you, you're fine. It's a little bit different, but you still have to do it. They require a
different level of attention.
Exactly.
And I think that's what people couldn't understand. They had a difficult time understanding that, because they were just like, we even had like a couple of friends who were like, well, you're sheltering your children. And it's like, look, you don't understand what it is to have a child that can just take off and run to the middle of the street.
Like, what exactly?
Yeah, like what do you want me to do? You want me to just kind of roll the dice and let's see if he runs off to the street or not.
He doesn't have a sense of danger, so you don't get that. He'll just run into traffic,
And so we had to deal with a lot of ignorance and a lot of just lack of awareness, I guess you can say. And it was, we lost a lot of friendships. It became very isolating. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we made was that we allowed those experiences to stop us from, creating or searching for other groups that we probably could have connected better. But also it's very difficult to find because, again, we tried to build this group and, it was hard because it's like we needed childcare. Unfortunately, the church that we were going to wasn't going to provide that, which is understandable. But, that really caused us to end up giving up on that group because the parents were like, no, we basically are just going to go watch our kids in somebody else's home. Yeah. Versus us just staying home and watching our kid at our house. No one wants to leave the comfort of their home because you've created like a safety system. So going somewhere else was very difficult. And I completely understand. And that was a lot of the reasons why we didn't go places because it was like, no, we created a safe place in our home. So now when we go somewhere else, I can't leave my child just to fend for themselves.
No, we're going to go to someone's house and be like, okay, you're going to need to move that. That needs to push over there. I need you to take that. I need you to get that over. It's like, I'm going to go redesign your whole home just to accommodate to my kid. So it's just easier, I will find a way that we can hang out when I can get someone to watch the boys. But it's not going to be fun for them. It's not going to be fun for us. We're not going to really be able to socialize. So it's really the point,
Yeah, I think we could probably do a whole episode on that, on the challenges and the struggles of like being a parent and trying to navigate, and
the importance of figuring out ways that you get your family out there, because the more that you isolate the whole family from going out to things, they can begin to feel isolated. You begin to feel isolated. That puts more strain on your marriage, on your relationship with your kids too. So it's like, it is important that you get out there, but do it in your way, not just stay at home all the time with them.
Really quick, one of the last things I'll share is this was early on the boys' diagnoses. We went to a special needs screening. It was a movie theater that was for special needs individuals. And, it was supposed to be a free roaming place for them. And they could get up and, if they needed to run around, like it was catered for them for special needs. Well, for some reason, this is like when I think that whole program had just started. For some reason, there was an individual there that didn't get the memo. And she complained about one of my boys being too loud. And we were asked to leave. And I don't know if you remember. And I just remember that day just feeling so defeated and so upset. I wanted to go down there and give that lady a little piece of my mind, but also just feeling so disappointed that the theater asked us to leave. Yeah,
I think the worker wasn't aware too, so like they didn't get the memo.
And again, it goes to show where the awareness was back then versus now. That lady would have been what you call nowadays canceled. Yeah, like she would have been like, no, you need to go. Like this is their space, this is their safe place. But one thing I will say that we never once again took the boys to a special needs screening. That moment really challenged us to take the boys to a regular movie theater. And ever since then, we never, ever once took them to a special needs screening. I think we attempted it one time and it was so loud. Yeah. And it was just like, you know what? This isn't going to help my child.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I wanted them to learn to, when you go to a movie, you sit down and you watch the movie, and this isn't a place to run around. This isn't, and I again, if we were in a setting where it was special needs and kids were running around, I'm not going to complain about it because I went to a special needs screening, right? Like, yeah. But if I'm in a regular movie theater and there's kids running around, then of course, I would be like, yeah, it's kind of distracting. I don't know if I'd complain about it, but I mean, it would catch your attention. Like, yeah, that's kind of distracting, So, but again, I don't know where I was going with that. But I wanted to say, like, it really led us to push our kids to, hey, let's try this, and let's see how they do. And they actually ended up doing really well until this day. We've never taken them to a special needs screening, and they do just fine. Yeah. So at the time, it was discouraging and it was very upsetting. And that lady was wrong, and the theater was wrong, and that whole situation, how it played out, was wrong. But it pushed us to try something else. Yeah. And I mean, till this day, I don't know why that memory just really stings till this day, but what it has shown me, the further I get away from that memory, the more that I realize, like, that moment actually ended up being a good thing, because
it was a defining moment.
It was a defining moment for us.
How we were going to do things with the boys going forward.
It really did show me, like, you know what? Okay, that someone wants to challenge us in that way. I could feel rejected, or I could feel challenged to try something else. Yeah. And it, and again, I mean, I share that because as special needs parents, I wish I could say that you're not going to have moments like that. You're probably going to have more than one or two.
Like I said, it goes back to what we were talking about, resilience. Mm-hmm. It builds resilience within special needs families when they have to go through things like that, when they have to feel that rejection or feel that awkwardness or feel that, like, you guys are awkward or weird, so stay over there. Mm-hmm. But it's also the fuel that kind of just like, no, F that, we're gonna do this, like, it's gonna happen. So.
And a lot of the times, a lot of the things we experience, it's more us that feel it than our kids.
Well, exactly. It's like we would, told Isaiah, like, as a teenager, you think you go to school and everyone's looking at you and they're worried about what you're wearing and what you're saying and what you're doing. No one cares. They're just they're over there worried about how they look. So that doesn't change even as adults. And everyone's just into just them. They want to make sure that they're okay. So once you begin to kind of like understand that, it allows you to be live a little bit more freely. And it definitely helped us with the boys, and like, why are we over here living like we're ashamed of them or we're embarrassed of them? Like, yeah, you should never be embarrassed of your children whatsoever. Like,
I think we're learning to embrace it again with, like, finding the silver lining, or just like laughing at things. Like the other day, we took the kids to this like water park or whatever, and they were on this ride, and one of our youngest got stuck, and he was just like, oh my God, it was just so funny. And like, we were just sitting there freaking rolling and cracking up, and people were just looking at us like, dude, your kid's stuck out there. And we're just like, again, I don't know, it would have been like, 5, 6, 7 years before, like, we would have been so embarrassed. And now we're just like, he'll figure it out. Like,
he'll get back in. He ain't gonna die.
He'll get back in. Like, but again, it's just not taking life so seriously. Not taking that diagnosis so seriously. Not that it's not. And I want to be sensitive again to people, because I get it. It's taken us a long time to get here. But I think if we would have understood, if we would know back then what we know now, we'd realize, like, just enjoy it. Yeah. Because either way, it goes by fast.
Yeah, exactly. You only get one life with your kids, and you only get them being toddlers for a little bit, then little kids for a little bit. And I don't know, even sitting here talking about how they're 14 and 15 is like blowing my mind, because I don't know, I still remember them as 2 and 3. So again, it goes by very fast. And if you have special needs parents or just neurotypical parents, like, you just embrace it. And you should, hopefully maybe just hearing this, you will begin to embrace the littlest of little things that they do, that it's just like, thank you for that. Let's celebrate this, that you're able to do this. And again, I think I just can't stress enough the importance of seeking out help if you do need it, because you will, especially if you're a parent listening to this and your kid was just diagnosed or you're thinking of getting them evaluated. I wish I can tell you that, like, oh yeah, don't worry, it'll just be like nothing, but no, it's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be hard. But I think now, because it's a little bit more common, unfortunately, with autism, hopefully that begins to decline, and that we can, technology will make progress in being able to detect that earlier or something, to where, or they eliminate the cause of it, whatever the case. But until then, at least know that there are a lot more services and therapies and everything that's more available. Early detection, in the sense of like getting that early intervention right away, that can definitely help with like speech and response and all that. So, whatever the case is that at least you should understand that you're not alone, that there's podcasts like this, that there's groups by the hundreds of thousands, I would imagine, either online or in person. But to seek that help, because the more help you get, the more services that you're offered, take advantage of them. It's only going to make the process and the transition a lot easier on you and your children. It'll help you to just kind of be able to again cope, because as of now, there is no cure for it. It's not going to go away, but you do find a way to make sure that your children grow up wanting for nothing and still having that normal, at least what's normal to them, their childhood. So,
and the more support, the more it empowers you to face the challenges that just keep coming.
Yeah, because it's gonna keep coming. I don't, one battle after another.
Yeah, and my last piece of advice is, if you are a family, you're a married couple, please make time for each other and yourselves, because I can't stress enough about how important it is for you guys to be on the same team, because it will. There is times where you feel like you're, whether you're the one that's the caregiver, like for me, myself, there was a lot of times that I felt like the load was all on me. But that was really just because I wasn't like including you in a lot of the things that I needed to, that needed to get done. And again, that was just because of just not reaching out and not asking for help. But also there was things that you as a father faced, especially a father of two boys, you were grieving your own losses, with this whole experience. So again, just finding support, whether it's therapy, support group, or you guys talk to each other, like,
yeah, because you're really not alone, because you have a community, but the immediate is that you have each other. You guys are going through that together. You guys are both the parents of the
And there was so many times where we would, even till this day. I mean, just recently we talked about certain fears that we have and certain challenges that we know are coming as adults. Like we talk about it and we're like, oh my God, you feel the same way. I feel the same way. Like, but we just don't say it, because it's like, you don't want to say it because it makes it more real. But not saying it also doesn't make it go away, right? Exactly. So again, I that's my biggest piece of advice, is if you are a married couple, I definitely, just don't stop communicating about, the challenges that come with being a special needs parent. But also reach out, if you need outside help, reach out for that as well. Yeah. And if you're a single parent, that's very, I can't even imagine. But again, there's just so much help out there, community, other parents that are also raising their kids on their own. We're definitely not alone. I've learned that having a child on the spectrum, or just a special needs child, like, there's so many people out there facing very similar challenges, and we just keep showing up.
Yeah, going through and feeling the same emotions too. Where you're just like, oh, only I'm feeling this, but it's like, no, it's actually kind of normal to feel what you're feeling. So,
and if you want to start a podcast and talk about it,
that's always good therapy.
This really, it's unfortunate that we don't talk about it enough. I think this is probably going to be one of the episodes that maybe reaches out the most to people because
I hope so.
It's again, you know, I don't know why. It's again, it's not shame. It's not that. I think it's just because we're still trying to figure a lot of things out. Just because we've been a parent of a special needs or two special needs individuals for 15 plus years doesn't mean we got to figure it out. I wish we can give better answers. It's just day by day. That's really it. That's all we can really say about it because, you know, for all we know, maybe Jude will wake up tomorrow and then he starts talking to us. And then what do we do with that?
I hope he has like a Scottish accent.
I think he does.
Or like an English accent.
I think he does. He's, you know, I still think he's faking it, but, you know.
Well, Jonah had the Japanese accent for a little while. Some of his words.
He did.
But, yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Like Jess mentioned, this was probably the most personal episode that we have done yet. But again, I think this is why we started this podcast, to kind of have these kind of conversations. And it's for us. It's for us to kind of let things out and kind of just remember certain things. But it's also to hopefully help, you know, someone out there that may be going through the same thing or knows someone that's going through the same thing. You know, and if you are, like we said, reach out to your, you know, your local regional center. If you're looking for evaluations, reach out to your normal doctor. But yeah, there's a lot of resources that you can find online if you want to know more about autism or what early, you know, what are the signs, what are the symptoms to look for if you're, you know, a new parent. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of help out there. So it's at your fingertips. But yeah. All right, guys. So we will wrap it up. We look forward to seeing you come back for our next episode. We don't know what that will be yet, but again, we hope that it will be entertaining for you. But until then, you guys have an amazing day.
Yeah, bye.